Guild raids. Still the most prestigious mode, and one that still delivers the best rewards. Most people build their rosters specifically only for guild raid. While, with more mythic bosses and later looping, those rewards recently got diminished, and other modes rewards, namely guild wars, have been increased, having a good team for guild raids is still extremely useful. In this video, I will give you an overview over the best meta teams that have crystallized, and who to build for them. Of course, I'll also talk about getting started with guild raids as a beginner. But first, why bother with guild raids at all? Guild raids plays out in seasons of 2 weeks. Players in a guild fight bosses to contribute damage to get to the next strongest boss, and after defeating the last boss possible, currently the 3rd mythic boss, eventually loop around to a lower tier boss again. The battles always have a limited amount of turns in which your goal is to deal as much damage as you can. You always get to choose any 5 characters plus a machine of war, excluding the faction of the boss you're facing. Fighting Gaskul? You can't bring orcs. Every boss has 2 side bosses, which buff the main guy up. Whether you need to defeat them or not depends on the rarity of the boss compared with your roster and the chosen strategy of your guild. As to not waste the token and because only the boss gives rewards. Every boss you defeat yields every member of your guild 1000 guild credits, as well as an XP book, the rarity below the boss you defeated. For each battle you participate in, you also get an exclamation, which depends on how much damage you dealt compared to your account level, starting at the lowest tier, Never Surrender, up to the elusive Epic Stand. Those are all connected to a corresponding personal reward of guild credits. How many rewards you will get in total will of course depend on your guild. Every one of the 30 members should strive to use their full 28 guild raid tokens each season. You get 2 a day, and guild raid fights are fairly short to play. You might feel mighty and carry your guild, or you might feel like not contributing at all. But this is a team effort, and it will always feel best for everyone included if each player tries to pull their weight. Every single bit of damage counts. While hardcore guilds will coordinate their attacks a fair bit on who has which team available and will be awake at which time, whether you try to do that depends on how serious you take the mode. If you're in a guild with varying player levels, it is always advisable to wait for a few hours for the lower level bosses you can easily defeat and let the lower level players handle that. Your 1 token might defeat a common or an epic boss. But if theirs only defeats a common boss, it would be a waste of tokens to not let them play first. If you want to get a better overview, installing Elhinaru on your Discord server helps a lot to see who uses tokens and who does well. Share replays with each other and give each other guidance on who to build, and you will definitely improve over time. Very serious guilds plan their members' team setup to be able to make the best of every guild raid boss lineup. The guild raid shop is chock full with rewards that especially beginners and veterans will appreciate. Beginners will want to unlock Archimatos, Eldryon and Gulgords for campaign access here. With experience books, the shop addresses one of the, if not the most severe bottleneck players face. The XP you get by naturally playing the game is pretty negligible in the grand scheme, and otherwise you pretty much only get meaningful amounts in the Rogue Trader, which you need access shards for, and the regularly returning Training Rush, which mostly gives you more XP for playing fights manually, as the books included aren't really that plentiful. Similarly, orbs are needed to reach new ceilings for your character's power by increasing their rarity. You might get the occasional orb in event rewards, but otherwise your other source is only requisitions. Fun, kinda like with the shards for the Rogue Trader. You see, requisitions are so random. I've got a video on them here. I wouldn't put my trust in them, and they're quite expensive. So guild raids are your best shot. You want your characters at the highest rarity you can, so you can withstand the mythic bosses where you will be stuck most of your seasons by now. And while every character only needs a maximum of 10 orbs of most rarities to be ascended, mythic bosses often require us to have multiple blue star units, so many legendary orbs are needed. The mythic orbs you'll get in the mythic missions of characters. If you need a guide, I do them for all the new characters, by the way. Legendary orbs you need a ton of. 10 to get to legendary, but a further 45 to get to the blue star on the threshold of the mythic rarity. So most people will buy as many legendary orbs as they need to ascend their guild raid characters to mythic, and then only buy books to be able to rank them up further. So they can be better in guild raids and perpetuate the cycle. I've looked at the 3 pages I could think of tracking guild raid team damage. Tacticus XYZ, Terminus website, as well as Raidman replays. I've linked them all in the description. It takes a lot of work curating a website, so give them some love. And if you want to get deeper into the subject, you can go there to watch plenty of runs. Always keep the following in mind. Sometimes runs look very good, but they might not be repeatable due to luck or randomized boss behavior, and the map always makes a huge difference. There are certainly also breakpoints in armor, where certain teams might become a little better against certain rarities of the same boss. Replay runs on the internet often feature fully maxed out teams, which you might not have. However, there's often kind of an easiest answer for the guild raid boss in question. What I also don't look at here are gimmick characters. Sybil is bad, but against the reverse side boss she can be great. Tank Smasher and Elhinaru have a weakness that can be better exploited with good movement. Traumachus creates clones of your characters that deal damage to him when they die. I don't look at side bosses this time, but keep in mind, characters not appearing here can still have their niche where they are good. Let's see first what kind of teams you can muster. Those are mostly archetypes, but you can successfully use other teams. But those here are the most successful teams that are currently used. We suppose, for example, that Lycus will be great for the Battlesuits team. But there haven't been many tests yet, as she just isn't there yet in an unrestricted environment. Most teams also include at least one legendary character. Each team will have a core that defines it, which you won't be able to alter. If you're a beginner, you will try to find suitable replacements for the other characters. After watching this video, make up your mind which team sounds the most fun to you and try to farm the legendary associated with it as quickly as you can. What makes a team good? Fighters need a decent synergy, enabling your damage dealers to deal the highest damage they can. With the time limit, dealing damage fast is key. Often, teams will hinge on a set of key fighters, and their absence against certain enemies will make the team collapse and unusable against that boss. You'll work with buffs more often than with debuffs, as the immune status of bosses lets them ignore hex effects as well as hit, damage and armor reductions, and they cannot even be suppressed, stunned or taunted. Still, damage debuffs work and have shown their worth against raid bosses, the most prominent being the mythic debuff of the Biowar, Hypercorrosive Acid, making the boss take up to 20% additional damage. The easiest archetype, and the one most beginners will use, must be multi-hit. While not that viable on its own anymore compared to the crazy numbers the other teams pump out, there's still players which will have a good old multi-hit team around. Most will move over to the other teams sooner or later, but for new players it's one of the easiest team compositions to play and get serviceable results. The team is centered around Elhinaru, who is like the go-to buff character in this game, increasing the damage any enemy in range 2 of him takes from normal attacks per hit. You see where this goes. We need a lot of hits. Beginner characters that have a lot of those are Revas, who is the queen of a lot of hits at 9 for her normal attacks, can summon, be a decent helper in a later mechanical team, and is the key player for the Battlesuit team. Other than that, Bellator has a lot of hits, Etana further buffs your characters and profits from Elhinaru even more than the others, Lastly, Snotflogger also effectively has 5 hits, and other than being a great character for many modes, adds plenty of grots taking care of the enemy's summons. It's decent for a beginner, and all the characters but Revas are needed for campaigns and have applications in other modes too, so you're naturally expanding your roster while contributing to your guild. Revas with their active makes Arena go by fast too, so bringing all those characters to a decent level is worth it. Eltion has since fallen from grace, but building his team to gold won't hurt your roster, and having a quite universal buffer around is always worth it. Being a positional buffer, he's one of the easiest to use and adds a decent chunk of damage. For a machine of war, take the Biowar. At the beginning, it is the most accessible, giving you the most AI manipulation tools for no cost, but you will have to build it for the most teams. Later on, in the endgame, it can increase your damage, but for now, it's good to lure enemies to attack the spawn mines and to occasionally use the active to pin an enemy into place. Other early characters that don't work well with this team, but are relevant in other teams, are Gulgurts and Akimatos, which you will build up for the respective campaigns anyways, which is nice. Before we get to the meta teams, please subscribe to my channel and maybe even leave a like. Should you not have used the referral code yet, feel free to use mine to get 100 Blackstone for you and various rewards for me depending on milestones you reach after using this code. If you like codes, also use Fox Raids for 10 Trajan shards and energy to develop your roster. You'll see why it's Trajan. Thank you all for being here, I really appreciate your support. Let's continue with the multi-hit team. Wait, didn't I? Yes, I did. The classical multi-hit team with Eltion isn't top dog anymore for quite some time now. I could also call this team the Custodes Team basically. This team is currently the best against Magnus, and still very good against the Hive Tyrant and Tervigon. It consists of a core of Karian, Trajan and Karn, often adding Ragnar and Helbrecht, but occasionally Dante is used instead of Ragnar. The team works pretty simply. Put Trajan next to the boss and try to use an active first each turn while attacking, preferably with active attacks, especially from Karian. Trajan, instead of adding damage to normal attacks, specializes in enhancing special attacks. Everything that's not a normal attack or defined as a normal attack in-game. Mostly actives and attacks happening from your character's passives. His passive adds a high amount of damage received to enemies, 22% higher than Eltion per hit, to enemies next to fighters that used an active. And if Trajan is also adjacent, oh boy, he even adds 2 extra hits to the first special attack of each character attacking that enemy. You see, this team is all about juggling around active uses. You want Trajan next to the boss as much as possible and want to use an active each round for maximum damage. Trajan's active doesn't do much for the team, but it can easily be used without any preparation. If you can't get Trajan next to an enemy turn 1, he's the slowest here, that's not too much of a problem, he will still buff you. The other key piece here is Karian. After attacking with his decent hits, Karian deals a single high damage hit to a big target next to him. There's another effect for other enemies around here, but the big target hit takes precedence, and most bosses are big targets. And that one hit does a lot of work, as Trajan's extra hits alone triple its damage. Karian further can use his active multiple times with a cooldown of 2 rounds in between. For every time he has attacked this battle, he will deal an extra 33% of damage, so you want to use this ability as late as possible, while still getting 2 uses in. Especially as you don't want to exchange 2 hits of the passive for the 2 extra hits of the 3 hit active. Remember, it would be the first special attack this round, if you don't get the nice buff instead. Not much to say about Karn. He has decent hits and absurd amounts of damage. His active does 3 consecutive attacks, and again has 1 hit, making Trajan help him more again. The second hit does 6 hits to go with Trajan's passive damage buff. Each round after his normal attack, he will do another attack, so he has a special attack each round to profit from charge run. If he killed a fighter this fight, he will do the same attack at the start of each round too. All bosses this team specializes in today are Psykers, thus Hellbrecht becomes useful, adding additional damage against each hit against Psykers for fighters next to him. This buff is 66% higher than Eltrion's. You see, here we only take very specific buffs, which in turn are stronger than the more general ones. The active being easy to use again is a plus, but getting extra damage and pierce for his friends in 2 hexes for 2 rounds makes him a huge plus. Lastly, there's either Dante or Ragnar. Ragnar is more common for his active Howl, adding a lot of damage to every fighter in this setup but Hellbrecht, who's arguably here for his buffs. The extra crit chance is just a cherry on top. He himself gets 3 extra hits while charging, making him work with Trajan's damage buff better. The alternative, Dante, adds universal damage to Karn and Carrion, just for them having rapid assault. It will also give them more hits if below 50% health, which is not always easy to achieve and sometimes risky, but that's where Dante really starts to shine as a buffer. His active isn't as easy to use on non-moving bosses though. If you face non-Psyker enemies, you can leave Hellbrecht out and use Dante and Ragnar both. Ragnar's many hits work quite well with Dante's passive. Generally, people enjoy the Biowar most with this team, which can manipulate the AI with offering easy targets, but also increases the damage of characters damaged by spore mines by at least 10% and up to 20%, provided your Biowar and characters are mythic. Against the 2 Tyranid bosses you can't do that, so instead Galatian is taken for his own damage potential and the ability to remove chaff. This team is quite straightforward. Always get someone using an active and Trajan next to the boss each turn, and always try to get to the high ground, especially with Carrion as he's your main damage dealer. Now, if we think this team further, we get the Lavistodes Team, a team that currently is the best damage-wise on 8 of the 12 guild raid bosses. Yes, it's that good. You won't be surprised that the staples of this team are Carrion and Trajan again, both of which are good exactly for what they were good for as described above. Laviscus, however, being in the name of this team, makes the difference. It plays similar. Get Trajan and Laviscus next to the boss, always use an active to keep Carrion's damage high, which will then increase Laviscus' damage, who always needs to attack last. Bonus points if you don't move Laviscus for the big extra crushing strike damage. It's a bit more technical than the previous team. Laviscus' passive steals the show. Every time an enemy next to Laviscus is hit, Laviscus gets angry about how well they hit the boss. This outrage counts the highest damage hit each of his friends does against the boss, and then increases his own damage by 120% of those. Forget about the second part. It only rarely comes in. Imagine this. Carrion does an extremely big hit each round. Karn also does, and is often included. And Laviscus gets jealous and just adds all that damage plus some to his. This would be cool enough, but his crushing strike increases his damage by half again if he didn't move. This depends a lot on the enemy, and it's often hard to set up. Thus, the Biowar is pretty much always the machine of war of choice, as it helps you control where the AI goes, and at Mythic also adds some damage. And that extra damage on every fighter getting fed back into Laviscus is also plus. Every damage buff you have basically gets doubled. Against Tyranid bosses, the Plague Burst Crawler is more or less always the next best thing. At the cost of being a bit more vulnerable with reduced armor, a Mythic Plague Burst Crawler adds damage to Mythic characters just for sitting on contaminated hexes, which it sets up for free. Laviscus' active is also easy to do, and does not only not use up his buff, but adds to it as he gets jealous of himself, and in case you manage to not use it As the first ability in the turn, it even gets tripled by Trajan. The key here is to try not to have to move Lavistodes and always attack with him last. The other characters here are quite flexible. Gulgurts is often used, as his active doubles the normal attack of adjacent characters, making the final big hit of Lavistodes in turn 6 humongous double big hit. For that to work, you need to set him up adjacent to Lavistodes, but not adjacent to the boss the turn before, which requires appropriate planning. Karn can do high damage and works well with Trajan as described, as does Dante, who will help Karn out and help Carian too, which gets passed along to Lavistodes subsequently. Vitruvius can add an extra hit to all attacks against the boss, which will help out. More hits generally are always good here, as Lavistodes always counts the biggest hit, and the damage variance is more likely to spit out a good hit with more hits. Crits especially are key here and help you out even more. Another regularly used flex choice is Azoth. He himself deals awesome damage, but only against very low armor. However, his passive increases non-normal attack damage by a quarter, helping again to funnel more damage through Carian and Karn into Lavistodes. His active being able to be used multiple times also makes you more flexible with your other characters' abilities and ensures you get one active a turn. Lastly, for Mortarion as a Psyker, Atlacoia is employed, not only making your whole team way more survivable, but also increasing everyone's damage by 20%. Her active is also one big single hit, which Lavistodes loves most. Especially being buffed for every ability used this run and dealing direct damage to Mortarion, this can do a lot of burst damage at once. If you set everything up perfectly in the last turn, using Carian's active first to get his passive tripled, then using Gulgurt's active to give Lavistodes and eventually other adjacent characters like Azoth or Vitruvius a second normal hit, followed by Lavistodes' tripled active, which now buffs the crit chance of the tripled Atlacoia active, you can reach damage numbers on that final Lavistodes hit that were unthinkable before and exceed numbers that traditional teams did in a full fight. The mechanical team is my favorite team, the only one I have fully built. For a time it was the undisputed best guild raid team, but has since been reduced to being the best only against the Hive Tyrant, Riptide and Turvigon, and still is pretty strong against the Tank, Screamer Killer and Sarek. It revolves around Exeter Row, the unassuming Rust Stalker. It's very straightforward. Put Row next to the boss and then attack with as many mechanical units as you can. Once you have enough mechanical summons, use Row's active. Row's stats are kinda okay, but his passive, optimized gate, makes the whole team come together. Whenever Row is next to an enemy that's attacked by a mechanical unit, it will deal 2 hits against that enemy. You can trigger this as often as you want per turn, and you can reach ridiculous numbers of hits. Magnus's Eye of Magnus, punishing characters for attacking him a lot. Lying, hitting you after blocking enough. That's because this team was so good. The active, Cord Claw, deals 4 hits of direct damage, but also adding 2 hits of direct damage to every attack Row does, till the end of the next turn. Start your turn off with this active when you have as many summons out as you can, and you'll profit from those armor ignoring extra hits for this round, your summon's turn, and your next turn. This has to be timed properly though, so your enemies won't just run away. You want to be next to the boss at the beginning of the next turn too, so against the Rogel Dawn for example, use it just in the turn before he will turn around, guaranteeing this. For enemies that move, you want to predict where they'll end up and move there, even if that means forfeiting Row's normal attack, as his passive attacks will make much more of a difference. At Mythic, his relic allows him to deal more crit damage depending on the mechanical units around him, so keep some friends around. Tangida is always part of the team too. Tan is an excellent summoner, 1 extra Skitarius per turn, just for attacking. Those have range too, and can leave enough space for your characters to maneuver. Once you've hit enough and your time runs out, you will switch his stance to the offensive stance, prompting every mechanical summon next to him to attack after attacking himself. A perfect match for Ro, basically doubling your summon's attacks in the best case and synergizing perfectly with them, often switching stance when using Ro's active. To fully support him, Arctus's passive allows him to repair mechanical units and prompt them to attack doing so. This is incredible here, making Tan pump out more Skitarii, and later getting him to order the Skitarii to attack another time per turn. The active repairs all mechanical units around him and lets them attack, which you'll want to time so Exitor has used his active, and you try to get Tan and a few summons as well into the bubble for the maximum attacks possible. Lastly, Vitruvius is mechanical. You will have picked up that's important here. After attacking with him, the enemy gets a debuff until Vitruvius is dead or he attacks another unit. Every time that enemy is attacked, it will suffer an additional hit. There is a damage cap here, but it's quite high, and you will deal so many attacks out with this team that this cap hardly matters. If there is no space or he's short of dying, just go away and heal him. His debuff matters most with him. As Machine of War, you will often use the Biowar for enemy manipulation and extra damage at Mythic. Galatian comes in against Tyranid bosses as a big mechanical summon that you can prompt to attack with Tan and Actus again. For flex choices we can add Shozil, who only attacks via mechanical units which won't get in the way, and due to their high range are perfect to have more units for Tan to activate in his offensive stance. Rajan, as you will have a lot of hits that can profit from the passive. Gulgurt for his high quality mechanical attacks, or Helprecht if the enemy is a Psyker for his typical big anti-Psyker buff. I know it depends on the enemy, but I really love Sho in this team for maximum Exitor Row triggers. While there's no real experiences about that out yet, the Reanimator has a huge potential for this team, for all bosses but Zarek, by buffing fighters being affected by its passive. That's nice, as you can target it however you want, and his active can trigger summons again. Anufet equally seems very good now, probably phasing out most flex choices, or even Vitruvius, as it is fairly easy for him to trigger Tangida another time per turn. Imagine him prompting his surrounding peons 3 times around. And Anufet himself can summon and, should someone die, resurrect them. Especially after getting his relic, which is just available now, he will raise Necron warriors even without his active and have one more of them attack a turn. Sounds awesome and will probably bring this team back into the conversation. This is probably also one of the easier teams to get for beginners, with pretty available characters, and to tide you over you can ditch Vitruvius and use another mechanical fighter, maybe even Aleph Null or Revas you already have around. The by far most important piece here is Ro after all. The next regularly used team is the Neurothrope Team. I know, they have creative names, don't they? It isn't the best at any boss, but a close second for 5 of them. And it's fun to play, if you like big numbers that is. It plays by attacking with the Neurothrope first in the battle, and then batter the enemy with psychic attacks after. Each subsequent round, the ranged 3 Neurothrope needs to stay away from the enemy and attack last. The key piece here is the Neurothrope, of course, who does 1 hit of psychic damage, infesting the enemy hit with neuroparasites. Every time an enemy gets hit with a psychic attack after, it will get another stack of neuroparasite. The maximum is 15, unless you have the non-crown equipped, in which case it's 16. Each stack adds a lot of damage to the Neurothrope's hits. With the non-crown, even the other psykers and summons will be buffed a little. So, first turn we want the parasites up as soon as possible. Every turn after, the Neurothrope will come last, so we can have the neuroparasites faster as much as possible. Use the Neuro's range of 3, we don't want to be next to any enemies for the ranged weapon specialist buff. Ahriman and Abraxas are also staples in this team. Ahriman's attacks always add fire to the enemy hex, and if anyone in the team then attacks enemies on fire, they will deal another 33% extra damage. It's important we have a percentage buff without a cap here, increasing the Neurothrope's damage by the same cut. Abraxas will summon a bunch of demons. Those will deal psychic hits if next to him, and of course also distract the enemy AI by a good amount. Equally as important, Abraxas can equip a Book of Fate, if mythic, prompting an adjacent summon to attack. And if that's a demon, nice, we get another stack of parasites. The same goes for Akimatos. Not that many summons, only the occasional blue horror when attacking enemy fighters other than the boss. But that book is just really good in this comp, because it can prompt Sikaar to attack. Saying that, before you get a mythic Sikaar, the Exorcist adds a percentage buff to the Neurothrope. After, Sikaar adds that damage to Psykers anyways. He himself can also attack quite often. After summoning, he'll attack once for being next to a Psyker. He'll attack at the start of the turn as any summons, and the 2 sorcerers will let him attack even more often with their book. This focus has changed the name of the team to Custodes Team for some. He as well as all the Charis characters can also be significantly buffed by Abaddon being around, and having Sikaar around will alleviate the enemy pressure on your fighters. Against Mortarion, Roswitha can add a lot of damage. Akimatos is quite frail, and Mortarion focuses down Psykers, and without that many Chaos fighters going on for the buff, and generally not wanting to get close to the smelly Primarch, Abaddon also drops out. This paves the way for good old Yazagor, who can use his active to give the Neurothrope an extra hit, which twice neuroparasite damage is a lot once per battle, at the cost of Yazagor generally not being useful outside that one turn. Okay, we've gotten to the final team, maybe not fully formed yet, but I love it, if only because it uses one of my favorite and best fighters to great effect, Revas, the Battlesuit Team. I always name it Mech Team in my head, but I get how confusing that can be with the Mechanical Team. Is currently only second best against Gaskul. Maybe put my Lycus video on watch later after this video, because she has the potential to fully elevate this team as soon as she's readily available and built, which will take some time. You need Farsight, who allows 2 attacks from Revas a turn, which you'll try to buff as much as possible with her 9 hits. Commander Farsight is the enabler, if not the most damage dealing fighter here. Way of the Short Blade makes ranged attacks against enemies that have an adjacent friendly fighter ignore some armor and deal extra damage. The ignored armor, depending on the boss, is basically extra damage too. That's good already. You want Farsight next to the enemy anyways. Better though, he and all Tau in 2 hexes will perform a normal ranged attack right after doing a melee attack. The active will once per game make all your characters with ranged attacks deal a big chunk of extra damage against big targets with their normal attacks. And yes, the combo of melee and ranged are both normal attacks. And here comes the star, Revas, who does 6 normal hits and always another extra 3 hits with his passive. 9 hits to be buffed. She will then proceed to do another 6 plus 3 ranged hits. With all of those having quite low pierce, the armor reduction is great, and Farsight's percentile buff also adds some more damage. But you know what would add even more damage? Per hit buffs. So Eltrion, despite only being able to do this to normal attacks, is back baby, dealing out his buff to a total of 18 hits, and that's just for Revas. Now with Lycus, you will probably swap out Eltrion for her, as from 6 hits on, her buff beats Eltrion's, And you know, Revas has more. Actus is here, only to enable Revas. Another double attack from her? Yes, please. And you know, you could also add Anufet here now. For a third hit, your most damage comes from Revas anyways. The more traditional pick would be Darkstrider, adding a marker light every time he attacks. Marker lights will increase Tau units damage by 15%. Depending on the enemy's armor, the extra attack will be higher. More importantly though, Revas still has ranged specialist and loses that 33% buff for not starting the turn next to an enemy if the enemy doesn't conveniently run away from you. Having that extra buff for a turn more is definitely a nice boon. The Plagueburst Crawler is paired with this group, as the bonus for standing on contaminated hexes has almost no disadvantages here, with most units being mechanical. Alternatively, of course the Biowar Spore Mines will also increase the damage just as well if you can get them to burst against the boss. Relying on a mechanical unit, mostly for damage, the Reanimator will also be interesting once mythical. That's all the teams commonly used in the meta right now. But I'm interested. What do you play? Do you add weird characters? I like to use Revas with my mechanical team, for example, mostly because I have a build and it's easy to get a few quick summons with there to trigger row more often early. I know it's not the optimal choice. Tell me your strange teams in the comments. Thank you very much for watching, and a huge thank you to LiveLit for proofreading my script. Let me know all of your guild raid tips in the comments, and have a great day.